Okay. Good morning, everybody. Apologize for the slight lateness. We want to make sure you had all the proper pieces of paper in front of you. I'm John Spritz, the president of the Northport Village Corporation Board of Overseers. This is our October 14, 2018 meeting. We did not have a meeting in September because we couldn't establish a quorum, so I'm glad to see you all again. We have Overseer Mike Lannon on the phone. Is that right, Mike?
That is correct.
That is correct. Excellent. We'll start by approving the minutes of the August 19th meeting, since the September meeting was canceled. We didn't have a minute. Do you have a motion to approve those minutes from August?
So moved.
And second? Second by Mike Terrell. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? One abstaining, that's great. Mike?
Yes.
Approval, so. I'm sorry?
She's just want to be
Okay.
It's as high as
That's as high as it can go. So Mike, just so you know, you're at maximum volume here, but you're coming across.
Well, no, now he is.
Okay.
He wasn't before.
It's always good to speak up, always good. We start the meeting, and end it now, with an opportunity for Bayside residents or meeting attendees to speak. If you have an issue you'd like to address, before we get to that, I will mention that we are going to have, in addition to the agenda here, an executive session for both personnel and legal advice matters. That'll happen at the conclusion of the meeting. But if there's anyone who'd like to address the overseers, they should now please just identify yourself and who's up first. Surely somebody is.
Are you going?
Maybe. I'm gonna wait and see how long.
Maybe I'll bring it up and then you don't have to.
There we go.
Good morning, Paul Overgag, 1 North Avenue in Bayside,
Okay.
cottage called Windy Corner.
Paul, can you actually swing around so that it's sort of closer to where Lee is over here?
Because of the camera.
That the camera catches you. We're not looking at the back of your head. That way. Thank you. Perfect. Thank
Good
you.
morning, thank you for all being here. I'm a resident in Bayside, and finally, after years, I've heard some rumors that there's going to be an erosion control project on North Avenue. I'd like to be informed, I'd like to know what's going on, I'd like to be helpful, and I'd also like to be possibly incorporating some of my erosion problems with the solution to the town erosion problem. As it always works out, when people work together, the end result is better. That's one.
You have the wood pile, right?
The wood pile is mine, yes. You like that?
Well, it's on town property, so I thought.
It is on town property? Well, that's a whole other thing that's happening down there. Who owns what and what is where? When I actually bought my cottage, in the deed office, it didn't even exist. So when the title insurance, I brought it to their attention. I said, the property doesn't exist, how can you insure it? They said, we'll insure it. But yeah, there's a lot missing there.
Why don't we let
I never know.
Paul make his presentation?
Well, I just want to get clarification as to the location. I'm one of those bad people who doesn't know street numbers. Is this Gordon's old house?
No,
No,
Gordon's cottage is next
behind
door.
Bowens.
Old Bowen's cottage.
Okay, thank you.
The
That's-
yellow one.
I just need to orient
And
myself.
for the rest of us, that's at the bottom of North Street.
Bottom North Street, number 1.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So that's issue number 1. Issue number 2 is I'd like to hear some feedback on how the Board of Overseeing is reacting to the fish salmon plants. And I read yesterday that the discharge is going to be 1 kilometer out of the river, which puts us right pretty much in front of Bayside. Is there any action? Is there going to be any action? We are a neighboring town. We do have rights. Is it being researched? Et cetera, et cetera.
Well, as far as your first issue goes, there is an infrastructure committee that is heading up the projects regarding this, and Mike Lannon, who's on the phone, is actually the chair of that committee,
Okay.
and Dick is on that committee. And so my best suggestion would be to follow up individually with Dick and or Mike, and to find out about accessing that information and the project that's happening down there. That's that piece. As far as the proposed on-land salmon development plant, which is going to be at Little River, essentially just up the road from us, I don't know, we have, to this point, we've sort of stayed back from that. We had a presentation from a gentleman a few meetings ago, right before the annual meeting. I don't know if the infrastructure committee, any other committee here, sort of safety committee, Wendy, what's your take?
So it's the utilities committee is following what's going on, and the utilities committee will be issuing a letter just indicating our concerns from a water quality standpoint, and we're waiting to figure out the right time to do that.
So that letter would go through the Board of Overseers, since it's, or is it? Am I correct?
Utility trustees.
Oh, utility trustees are issuing it, not the utility committee of this
Yeah, I
organization.
mean, so the overseers can, of course, chime in, and we would certainly want to keep you advised. But because water and sewer are two of the things that we should really think about when you talk about this discharge, the water and sewer department met on Friday, discussed those very issues. Dr. Crowfoot has been attending the public meetings. We have sent other people to the meetings so that we're not just reacting to what we read in the paper, but we hear it directly. Dick McElhaney, who's our utilities superintendent, luckily has a wealth of knowledge as to what these words mean for the rest of us. Billy is great at this. And so the utilities trustees decided on Friday that there needed to be a voice from us as to that, particularly with regard to the discharge issues that you discussed. You just mentioned, for instance, the discharge extending 1 kilometer. The most recent meeting that was actually expressed, according to Dr. Crowfoot, with 3 variable issues in terms of how far out the discharge would go and the nature of the discharge. So we decided that we would be actively involved in monitoring and expressing our questions and our concerns if we have any, but that doesn't mean that the overseers shouldn't either. But the overseers themselves have not yet decided to do that.
So should we wait until such a letter exists before the overseers might chime in as co-signers?
I wouldn't make the recommendation that anyone interested should wait. I think the utilities trustees' decision was, before we write a letter reacting, we ought to process the information that's available. We don't want to simply be reactionary. We want to understand the questions and the answers before we say how the trustees feel about it. I think I would recommend that the overseers do the same thing. A letter today from the overseers would say what? We don't know what you're reacting to. So
I'll try. The other thing we've talked about is having someone from Nordic Farms come and address this directly. So we did have someone from the water department come and talk to us, and so the utilities is satisfied from a water standpoint that it is not going to have an impact on the flow of water to our system. The more recent one has to do with the discharge into the bay and how it may impact specifically our permit for discharge. And so we have discussed at some point when it's appropriate to maybe have a representative from Nordic Farms come and talk to us directly, so that we hear it from them and not filter through these other forums.
Well, that, to me, sometimes is the worst source to hear something from, is from the permit, from the people who are seeking the permit. You know, I'm sometimes on both sides of the fence, and, you know, if you're on that side of the fence, everything is possible and nothing is the problem. We're only going to add 0.75% of all we've already done. You know, that's a very small number, but I feel that if the board doesn't educate themselves on what's going on, I feel you might get blindsided by these people. And, you know, there is no going back. There is no going back. Once this thing is in process, you can't stop. It's like a freight train.
I think that what I would like is for the utilities committee, utilities board, to keep this board informed and to let us know if and when you're planning some sort of a response and how you might educate us so that we could perhaps join in. But I would rather the information come to one source rather than try and filter it in through two.
Where's the town of Northport on this? I mean, is the town, have they, are you?
No, I'm not aware of it.
The town of Northport officially is, at least through their planning board, is thus far approving this process. There was another meeting about 5 days ago where North Farms released their initial set of numbers in terms of what they're going to give to DEP also. So there is no indication yet that the town of Northport will not approve the process. I should put it that way.
From our perspective, and I think you're right, that this should be.
Town of Belfast, that's in Northport.
Yeah, but
I
the
think
town
you're
of
talking about
Northport.
Belfast.
No, I mean Northport.
No,
We're part of Northport.
Sorry,
Northport has more.
Northport is not taking a position on this. I was speaking of Belfast. I
Yeah.
apologize.
Northport did approve the release of the option to purchase on the land, right?
Right.
So they,
Right.
at least as a public action, didn't stand in the way of the plan going forward.
Right.
Our discharge is, we have a secondary treatment, primary treatment. We only process stuff once, and we measure. You hear us every single month talk about TSS and BOD and dilution. So we, the utility trustees, are very concerned about the things you just mentioned, because you all would have to invest millions of dollars if we ever lose our license for that primary treatment facility. We do great with TSS and BOD, but if it's coming from another source, what's that going to mean? And so we are very aware of your concerns, because they're shared concerns. What I don't think it would be in our best interest is to react. We want to process the information. And that's why we're so lucky to have Billy and Dick, and this Dick, who actually understands what things like TSS and BOD mean, because I don't.
John, could I just add a clarification?
Sure.
The last public meeting, which David Crowfoot, I was there also, and that was a public meeting for the permit for the discharge. And in answer to the question at the public meeting, where is the pipe going, they explained they haven't filed that permit yet. And so they have to file an application to show where that is. And when that is filed, there'll be another public hearing. So that, where the pipe is going and how far out, that's just conjecture at this point, because they have not filed for that permit.
Understood.
I think too, and I've been at the meetings, I think that the next hearing, not related to that, but where this is on the agenda, is the Belfast City Council, which I think is the 16th, isn't it?
Yeah, but the discharge is all, that's a matter of the DEP. In other words, the city doesn't, at this point, you really need to make your case to the DEP rather than the city of Belfast.
Okey doke.
Yes, contact information to get in touch with Dick.
What's the best way, Dick, that you would like?
Probably,
Would you jot it down, think?
Hey, John,
Yes, Mike?
I'd just like to chime in on the service function. One of the issues right now is that there are no regulations at ADEP for land-based game farms.
Right.
So right now, they're in the process of establishing these rules, and the rules are being written by the proponent in a way. And I think waiting for these to come out before we really get involved is somewhat of a concern. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Got it. Appreciate it. You're right. Next, anyone else like to speak? Come on, Gordon, you're there.
Okay. I won't be long. I'm really kind of listen on some of the other issues, but now that I'm a year-round resident of Gordon Fuller on George Street, a couple things that I've been thinking about the last couple of years is somewhat of a concern of, there's only a few roads now that are not plowed in the village, one of which goes right by my house, is Pleasant Street. And right off the top of my head, I'm sure there's a couple of others, but I'm not North Street, a couple of others. Policy, I believe, is if somebody lives on those roads, they get plowed. Is that kind of right? But, you know, there's a fire on Pleasant Street, and there's 3 feet of snow, the whole village goes up, no possibly, over dramatizing thing. So I'm just curious, and maybe somebody would just like to say why we don't, and particularly with Pleasant Street, if I'm correct, Billy now has to plow down into Auditorium Park, at least part of it. That's right, Auditorium Park, not completely plowed, but that's the house down there. And it's a little bit, Billy, I don't want to put words in your mouth or anything like that, but it's a little bit inconvenient for Billy to get down in there, if I'm right. And I was just curious if even one pass down Pleasant Street with a plow, then he could go right straight across versus backing up 3 or 4 times. You know, I just kind of curious. A lot of people, I keep it open with a couple of tracks with my snow blowers. That would take away from a couple of things that I do in the winter, but maybe just a comment on policy relative to plowing on the streets that aren't plowed now. And my second question is, again, just a question at the moment on street lights up in front of my house, pitch black. You know, I've noticed at the bottom of Main Street, there's a street light, bottom of Griffin and George, street light, and it's way down to Bartlett's. I'm not even sitting here saying I'd like a street light. I'm just curious policy or how street lights are determined where they're located. I would certainly not want to lead. I want to talk to my neighbors and stuff like that. But just those two, if you could address those two quickly, I would appreciate it.
Not at all.
Plowing and streetlights are both fiscal issues. The cost of the plowing is a big piece of the budget that you approve every year. The compromise that the villagers have adopted over the years is don't plow where you don't need to plow, plow where you need to plow. Because if you're going to expend money, you might as well spend it where you need it. You're right, more and more people are living here year-round, and in places that were not traditionally laid out on roads that are easily accessible. The Auditorium Park house caused a great deal of issues last year. It's really about how much are we going to spend on plowing and where can that resource be best done. It's a challenge every single year. The second piece on streetlights is exactly the same. We pay for those streetlights with CMP. I think there were 14 back in 2002. I think there's probably 11 now, because I know that on our street we got rid of it on purpose. But again, it's a matter of how much would a street light cost. Can we put that into our budget? And so those are both good issues to when we're formulating our budget for next year. We can say we're getting community comments about these things. This is how much more it's going to cost you, folks. Do you want to pay for it?
Lee?
A number of times, street lights been proposed, and then when we talk about it, people don't want them.
Yeah. And that may be the case here too.
But I don't think it means that we're blind, that if someone does want one for safety, if your neighbors, for instance.
Right. No.
We don't want, Gordon wants one and Cookie doesn't,
Right.
and the two neighbors are warring in this meeting. We don't want that. But it's a safety issue and a fiscal issue.
So
And
it
a
makes
night
sense
pollution
if
issue.
I wanted to pursue this to maybe at least inquire with my neighbors and then bring it back.
Initially.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it would, every decision we make to spend money either pulls back another resource that you want or increases your tax bill. It's just, that's.
I'll just say on the plowing issue, my guess, and if I'm wrong on this, that it would take less time to take one turn down Pleasant Street than to back up 2 or 3 times to go across the street. And
Now we'll turn to
that's
Billy.
all I will
Well, let's,
comment on.
Vicky,
I just want to say about the street light, if you want to take a survey, then shouldn't it go to utilities? Is that a utilities issue?
No.
Is
We're just
it
water,
a
so we're-
safety issue, or, I mean, does it go to some committee that then presents it to us as
You know,
part of the budget?
The streetlights in the past have been, because it's always a fiscal issue, it's been the treasurer, and I've been the person who contacts the woman at CMP to fix the light or take it out or put it in. So so I don't want more things on Wendy's
Well,
head.
I was just trying to save Gordon another trip to the overseers. If somebody who's doing the budget should come under somebody.
This is
So it does
training for
come up-
him, he's gonna sit at this table.
So it does come under protection and safety, but I must say, I haven't ever dealt with that specific line item. So I think if we want to put it in safety, you know, that's.
Streetlights is not a safety issue, I'm
It-
sorry.
it
It may
is
be there in the
yeah,
budget,
It
it's
is
not a
budget,
safety issue.
It is,
Isn't it like fire hydrants?
yeah,
Exactly.
it is. It
We
is.
have fire hydrants as well. So that's how you, so again, I'm fine if it's not within safety, but these are where you put the items.
I'll check with
Plowing
my
issue,
neighbors.
Billy?
The only one thing that you got to do is you have to sand that if you plow it, because if somebody goes down there and no sand, you get hurt, the village is liable. So that just adds to your.
You mean on the dirt road?
Your yardage of sand,
Because the ice builds up.
just to slow you down.
Yeah, so
It would have to
there's
be sanded.
material.
Come on, Gordon, it's just for 3 or 4 months.
Well,
I'm more concerned about the fire, to be honest.
Well, and the reason we do get this kind of question to us more and more with people spending tons of money on cottages in Bayside, they are surprised to hear that Allen Agency says, I'm sorry, it's not plowed, you have no homeowners, you're not getting it. So we have had people come here and talk to us about that problem. So it's a different insurance issue now.
other questions in the audience? Yes.
Yes, so I'm Ned Leitner, and I am going to be a year-round resident in Bayside, you know, November 7th.
Congratulations.
You still want to vote in Belfast, is that it?
So right now, it's still my summer place. This is another street light thing, but it's not quite as big a deal, and you don't have to act on it at all. But I have really come to appreciate walking around town and around the dock, you know, after a meal before dessert. And I've come to appreciate the beautiful night skies in the park now that street lights are more downcasting. But there's one sore spot, and that's the light at as you go out onto the dock. It's really, it's really bright, and I don't think it would be a huge thing to convert it to be more down, but I don't know. But this is just my personal bias that the whole park area is really great for, you know, at night looking up at the stars and stuff, and I've come to appreciate it. It's purely an aesthetic one, not a public safety one, but I just thought that someone should say, it'd be great if you could, like, someday have it not such a light polluting light. That's my thing.
I suspect, in fact, I think I know that light serves multiple purposes compared to other lights, including keeping that area bright so that
Teenagers.
elders can observe what's going on among younger populations on that dock. And the less light you have there, the more you encourage youngers to perhaps engage in activities we're not excited about.
I'm not talking about the light at the end of the dock, which also is annoying, but the one that when you walk out to the dock,
Right at the base of the
at the
causeway.
base of the
At the
causeway.
base of the causeway.
At the base of the causeway, that's the one I was referring to.
Maybe the same applies, but
I don't ever see teenagers hanging out
they're
there.
not there, but it's a point of egress, yes?
I thought that was one of the night illuminating, the downflow lights, because we did replace them all to the downflow. I thought.
I'm sure in your house would be really noticing
Can
it.
it be made on and off by activity?
Motion.
Yeah, motion.
That'd drive you nuts. That would drive you nuts.
I don't think CMP will do that for us.
Not for
They're
that kind of
CMP owned. But if it's not one of the downward cast lights, I don't know why we didn't change that. We changed most of them
That one is.
3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Park
Down
Row we
cast.
did, right?
Well, Park Row we got rid of.
Bill, did you say that one's not the
The one out
CMPs?
at the end of the causeway, just before you enter the dock, is ours, that we put. And that is a downward facing light.
Okay.
That's the most, that's the only one that could find through the electrical company that was a downward facing light. That was our best option.
Okay.
We were trying to think of that same issue of the light going, you know, out, whatever. So we were trying to force it down. The only other thing, I'm not sure, I can't remember what's in it for light, whether it could be dimmed down
It's
somehow.
LED, isn't it, John?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it is. That makes it particularly.
So I remember there was an issue in Belfast along the Harbor Walk down by the boathouse, and they tried a number of things, including, putting a more of a, what was it called, a shade around it, so it would look more down. I mean, obviously, if you look at the other lights in the park, they have much more of a downcast look than this one, which is more like a globe.
Right.
And it's the globe thing that glows that, makes it so that it's like light pollution in my
Yeah.
mind, I guess is the term.
Right.
So, as I say, it's no big deal, but in the effort to have our town be as friendly for night skies as possible, that would be one that I would encourage to be changed.
You could go to the type CMP puts up. I'm not sure if they will put a light on that pole of where it is because of the issue of salt spray up on the light. Years ago, we had one of the old Mercury ones out there that CMP kind of looked after, and they wanted to get away from it because the salt spray kept making it go out.
Would it be helpful if I talked to Bob Richards from the Belfast Public Works and asked him if he had any suggestions? I don't know, I'm just saying I'd be happy to try to.
Lee?
My attitude towards this is, the only reason we're talking about this is so we can look up in the night sky. That, to me, is pretty mediocre. And
Yeah,
we're
well,
only
I'm
hearing-
mediocre.
And we're only hearing the complaint from one person. So I'm not going to be very concerned about it.
You're hearing the complaint expressed by one person. You're not sure how many people would like to see less light pollution.
Yeah.
It is not going to cost the overseers or Billy anything to answer the question by posing the questions. I think it is fair and appropriate that these people come and ask these questions. It tests our assumptions about what's right.
So it sounds like there is encouragement, Ned, for you to investigate this further.
Okay.
You know what would also be helpful? I don't want to have a meeting of us going down there necessarily at 10 o'clock at night, but
I'm asleep.
if there's any way to show a picture or something because I get what you're saying, but it's very visual.
Yeah, I'd be
Maybe
happy to
picture
take a
at 10 o'clock.
picture.
Thank you.
Post it on Facebook.
And post it, or whatever, just, that would help. Any other issues? Yes, sir? No? One is blue shirt first, you win.
I was just going to say, I do have an item, but I'd like to be included in the agenda for the executive session.
You can be included in the agenda for the executive session to the degree that your item is particular. So there are multiple items in the executive session, so for that, yes. Sir?
I just wanted to come and introduce myself, and I certainly know some folks here and have been in this area for many years.
Who are you?
My name is Charles Gary. My grandmother, I grew up on 8 Griffin Street, Ruth Page. Actually, Billy is, I would call him my Uncle Bill and Cousin Bill. But, for many years I've been wanting to come back here. And actually, when my grandmother died, I, was just starting my career and didn't have the money to purchase her house. And would have loved to live at 8 Griffin Street. And it's a beautiful cottage today, obviously. I've talked to my uncle for many, many years. He's actually not my uncle, he's my dad's cousin, Dean Wood. He's owned the property on the corner of George and Griffin for, 40, 50 years. I've been doing a lot of research about it because I find it interesting, a lot about my grandfather and my great-grandfather, and just how much they've done down here in Bayside is pretty amazing. I think that property's been in the family since 1878 or some crazy thing. I was there the other day. I cleaned out some of the smaller trees that were growing up in there. I found some old milk bottles from 1937. It's real. There's a lot of history in that property that's just pretty amazing. I know we've had, some discussions. I thought I was doing the right thing, got the land surveyed. I run a large corporation down southern Maine. Thought I needed to get my attorney so that we make sure we're doing everything right. Happens to be that it's a piece of property that's very skinny. It's, there used to be a cottage on there. It was called the Never Inn. I've got some old photographs and some old information that I dug up that was hiding in a cabinet in my uncle's house. That was, and my uncle, I call him my Uncle Dean. He's in the nursing home right now. He's not doing so hot. He needs to sell some of the property to keep his health up, so I bought it. Whether I was going to be able to do anything or not, I was still going to buy it. I don't come from a lot of money. I mean, you all know that. But I was able to move out, start a good business, and come back, and I'd love to be a part of where I used to grow up. So, I've got the property there. I know you guys talked about it. We got a permit for a real small cottage. I know there's a section of property that's in question. There's no record of anything. The only record that I found was back in a cupboard. Again, the same cupboard. There was an envelope with all kinds of stuff. I've got receipts from the old Dutch Inn, where my grandfather had. I've got the tax receipts from 1971 all the way forward, everything that was burned in some of the fires. My builder had a really good idea, and I just wanted to bring it forward to the overseers. I've already reached out to, I heard you talking in the beginning of the meeting, I've already reached out to Mrs. Tad. She's actually a mutual friend of ours, a broker. Linked us up, we talked. We're going to have a discussion about, what my plan is. I'm an open person. I want her to be involved. I don't want her to feel threatened. But with that lot, if there was an ability, because the old cottage that was there was actually on the property that's in question. You can see it from the photos. My Uncle Dean was asked to put gravel in there, I don't know, many years ago because of some mosquitoes, and it's a big pile of gravel in there, and it's grown up, and you can tell the trees that are growing on it. It's an eyesore, actually. But the way the property is, it's long. We, by deed, own the lots on the end. Some maps that I have say they're supposed to be 50 feet, but the deed says they're 25. I would be, I heard something about, and I don't, again, I'm hearing this stuff from my attorney or from, meetings that they've had with Judy. There's some thought that wants to be a green space, and I couldn't agree more. I would love to see if there was an opportunity that we could draw a line and make the corner of George and Griffin a nice little green space with some benches. I would pay for it. I just want to be able to have a place down here where I grew up. That's it.
Just for clarification for those who are viewing, we should indicate that this is, and we've talked about this before, the strip of land that goes up from George Street on the, I guess, northern eastern side, and goes up into the tabs. The tabs are the first occupied house heading up that street on that side.
That's correct.
But it's essentially abuts John Woolsey's property, heading up that piece of greenery, because not everyone always remembers where it is. Judy?
Can I ask 2 questions?
Sure.
Have you got it resurveyed? Ben suggested, your lawyer Ben Lund suggested that he didn't like your survey and that you were going to go back to scratch.
I did not get it resurveyed. I certainly can.
I know surveys cost a lot of money. I just that was one.
Well, he's a lot less expensive than Ben. So, that's a great suggestion.
The other question I have is, could you share the pictures of the Never End Cottage? Because that will help the overseers continue the process of evaluating this.
Yep. And let me clarify that, Judy, is that the pictures are from some of the historic glass slides, that all you can see is the roof line.
Okay.
So you're looking, I guess it would be northwest from the other cottage right there on the other side of Griffin with the tower. But if you look past it, you see the roof line, and believe me, I've got a 90-year-old, actually I don't really, I think she's my aunt who lives in Connecticut, and she remembers staying there, and she knew the name and, all that stuff. So it's a lot of history that I'm trying to dig up, but I really don't have a lot of people that are alive.
From my perspective, and how I left it with Ben, was let's keep talking, and this was before August 16th, and I haven't heard from him since then, and share as much information as you can with us so that we can do our evaluation.
Sure.
Those have to be in executive session. You said you're building a small cottage. Your permit, which is posted, is almost 2,000 square feet.
Yeah, it needs to be updated. I mean, the cottage that we're looking at is somewhere around 1,400 square feet with both floors. So, and I've told my builder, obviously my builder, he wants to build as big of a building as you possibly can. This is not. I want this to be I want it to fit in, and I've already gone back to him and told him that.
And Mrs. Tab called me concerned about what she was observing, and you said that you have spoken with her since Friday?
Yeah, actually I spoke.
Because it's real important to us to not get involved in a conversation between you and Mrs. Tab as to what appears to be a type of boundary issue. And I hope that you guys can work that out.
I'm absolutely 100% sure we can.
Vicki?
I would suggest also that you might want to talk to the Woolseys, and all I will say is that those people surrounding are concerned also about what's going to happen there. And I really appreciate you coming today, and I do appreciate the history. It caught everybody a bit by surprise when we learned what the issue was with that piece of property. But I do think that they should also have an opportunity, if we're talking about what to do with what the Billy Jones there, that they have some input.
Well, and that's how I left it with Ben also, is any public decision is at the annual meeting in 2019.
And that's fine. I mean, again, I'm not looking, we're planning on building this cottage. That's what we're looking to do. The property line, if, getting that other property and doing that, that's kind of secondary.
Well,
Do I understand that when you say we're planning on building skies, you're talking about roughly in the middle of that vertical strip, or more towards the top, more towards the bottom?
It'd be away from the tabs, by the...
it's on the disputed part.
It's adjacent to the tabs. The
Right.
tabs are on one side, and there's a piece of their property that's disputed, and then the other side is currently village
There
property.
seems to be some dispute here, so.
It's not being built on the disputed property.
Well,
Okay.
the clearing seems to be
On who's disputed?
on the village disputed property.
No, because there's a property
No.
marker there.
That's
I
right.
agree with him. No,
They've
but
already
that
lined-
piece, there is a property
No.
marker there, because the disputed, my understanding is this disputed
It's the piece that's not...
in the survey goes halfway into their house. So there is a property marker, and yeah. I live up above them at the tabs.
I can,
I don't have a copy of the survey.
I don't either, but I can tell you
That's right,
that
you can take
if
over.
you're looking at Griffin Street, and you've got the tabs
Would
here.
you come over here? Sure.
Actually, it is helpful because we happen to have this. So it's
Up there.
right, it's this
Yeah.
strip.
So your
No.
deed includes these two,
That's correct.
and so the
And
disputed ones?
and this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. These are the tabs. So we're building here, 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 and here, and here. The disputed piece is between these two that you don't see on here. These are, so the disputed land is between this horizontal and these vertical walls.
Okay. That's not how I recall your survey showing it. But we will, gotta
We'll
keep
get
talking.
closer. Okay.
I don't have it here, so.
Got it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. This has been illuminated. I wish there only were photographs of what it looked like there. Any other issues or questions or issues from attendees?
I have one comment, John, about that building permit on Griffin Street.
Yes, Mark.
And it was not placed in a conspicuous place so people could see it. It's buried in the woods. It should have been up by the road so people could see it. I also understand that the owner did not notify the others when the permit was pulled. gates are being placed here, that permit should be out by the road so everybody can see it.
Can I speak to that?
Yes.
So, the builder pulled the permit and was told that he could put the permit up, and he did, and he put it on a tree that if you drive by, you can see it from the road. And he did it the day that he got the permit. I even came all up from Falmouth to look to see if the permit was there. The permit was there. Now, I will tell you that I've cleared some of the brush, and the brush is in front of the permit right now, but just because that's where I put it to chip it, but it will be gone.
There's no duty, as you know, from your own activities, Mike, to notify abutters about the intention to build, pull a building permit unless you're seeking a variance. This would not have required a variance. It is on an internal tree, an interior tree. At the time, as my understanding is, of course,
There's no other trees to put it to.
So, but it is visible now. But there's no. As in most zoning ordinances, a building permit can be pulled as long as the application establishes right, title, and interest.
Right.
One concern I have is, at least with regard to the conversations that Jeremy Martin has had with us and Ben Lund, your attorney, the question is right, title, and interest as of August 31st had not really been resolved, given that your survey says that the village might own some of this land.
Right, title and interest.
In the land upon which you intend to build. So, I think dialogue is going to be the key to this problem.
Vicki?
So, when you said his attorney suggested another survey because the attorney didn't like this survey and thought maybe there might be something else that somebody could find, is that where we're going with this?
Ben Lund is a really bright lawyer, and he was very cranky when I spoke with him about what he perceived to be the quality of the survey. And I said, hey, good deeds, they're the ones who do the surveys in Bayside. We all like good deeds. I think he got the right guy.
Well, that's who I was told to get, so.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the survey, at least as currently drawn, says, whoops, these little dots in the middle, the Village Corporation owns. So I didn't know, because I haven't heard from Ben.
And it's really no lots, it's just if you look at that map, the lots, there's nothing in between there. There's no road, there's no right-of-way, there's nothing. And my family have lived on it and used it for hundreds of years. And there's still a foundation there underneath all of that dirt that got put because of the mosquitoes. And we were told, and my uncle was told, I went back to the meeting notes and saw, I believe it was Judy, it said, can we get in touch with Dean Woods to fill this in? And he did. So, and it's on the land that's in question.
But there are lots of pieces of property in Bayside like that.
I know.
And when I went to get my property surveyed, the good deeds people said, we hate going to Bayside because they know it's a mess.
Right.
And so every time a transfer takes place, it's a matter of cleaning up an old mess.
I mean, I could have built there and not got it surveyed, but I felt like I was doing the right thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, better.
That's always the beginning of a problem.
I completely agree.
Okay.
All right. Any other issues from meeting attendees at the moment? And we have opportunity at the end of the meeting also. Thank you. We're going to move into the meeting proper now, which starts with the report of the president. I think the warrants have all been circulated. Our treasurer, Steve Casalos, is not here. Ned, you might want to turn your camera around again. I think it's still pointed.
No.
No, am I wrong? Put my glasses on?
It's
Excellent.
in your general direction, I can see.
Excellent. Today, it's gotten a little chilly the last few days, which reminds us that, among other things, we move into winter office hours, and there's been some consultation among Steve and Amy, who is our office manager, and starting after today, starting as of today, we'll move into winter office hours, starting today, which are going to be Sunday from 9 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon, Wednesday from 2 in the afternoon until 6 in the afternoon, and Friday from 9 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon. That's a total of 12 hours. Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday, and that continues up into May, I think, usually, right? As we get closer, we'll figure out the exact dates. But and I think these have already been posted by Dan and have been posted on signs.
Yeah,
So
they're up on the bulletin board right now.
since we didn't have a September meeting, this was something we were going to announce and discuss then. Also, there was a note from our treasurer that for the last couple of years, we have thanked the town of Northport salt and sand distributor with a gift certificate, and it would be a good thing to do that again. You like these people like these on your good side, right, Bill?
Yeah.
I don't remember how much it has been for in the past. So, Amy, my request of you is could you look up whatever we did last year and purchase it? And I think in the past, I signed it's been like an Amazon gift card, and you sent it, I signed it, we sent it on. So if we could just get that in motion, it'd be great. Thank you very much.
Does that have to be Amazon? Could it be a local business, like even a Lowe's or a Home Depot that local people work for?
If you want to do Aubuchon, that's perfectly fine.
Aubuchon.
Everybody likes Aubuchon. Want to make it Aubuchon?
Thank you.
You're
We're
welcome.
going to keep our economy, we're going
Yes.
to keep it here.
And just
Belfast,
Belfast, it is much better to get out of that Amazon card because it's difficult.
Absolutely.
Local better.
Got it.
Even Hanford.
In general, Billy is saying local cards are better. Got it. For the future, that is noted. Thank you. I have other things that people have brought up, but I think they're going to arise during the course of the meeting, so I'll let them come up as they may. That'll be the end of my report, which leads us to the treasurer's report. The treasurer is not with us. He has sent a goodly number of pieces of paper around, including his report, the variances thus far, performance versus budget, and performance versus budget, which is the horizontal one. As always, Steve has in the last page highlighted, in this case, 14 categories that are marked throughout with his notes of a special interest. I think the two, to me, that really stand out are the cost overruns for the lifeguards and the police officer, because those total $7,000 themselves. And I don't know who's on the, Judy, you're on the Finance Committee?
Yes.
Who else here? Is there anyone else who would like to sort of maybe lead a discussion, if there is a discussion here?
Well, Steve sent these out yesterday, and he contacted me and asked me if I had any questions, and because his notes were all very clear, I didn't. I welcome any questions from you all.
On his treasurer's report, he says that we have currently about $4,800 of available funds. He also recommends it is prudent to hold aside $5,000 for last prizes, so that equals. I'm now looking at the treasurer's report.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we are.
Right,
At the top, he says, we have more available funds we did in the last report, 4,800
Versus 2,000.
versus 2,000. At the bottom, he says it's good to hold aside 5,000. So to me, he's saying don't spend anything.
There's a question about the bullet point here about
The
remaining
trees,
budget for the tree work.
And that's coming out, I'm sorry, which bullet point?
Report.
On the report, down at the fourth bullet point, says 2,500. We have, I had approximately 4,000. One of these says 4,200. And I'm just wondering if maybe there was an error, because some of the money we spent that was reported at the last meeting came from monies from last year. So I had in my head that we had approximately $4,000 left.
I recommend that you speak personally and directly with Steve and resolve it.
Yeah, bear in mind that there was the rollover from last year because of the special warrant.
And then money that was
And so this does appear to me to be inconsistent with what is reported.
Thank you, yeah,
Resolve
Well.
as best you can. It's either one or the two, or it's a third thing.
So I will comment, yeah, I do understand that we've gone over budget for both the lifeguards and the police. We're gonna have to put a mechanism in place next year to, manage those employees a little bit better. And quite frankly, it can't be me on the safety committee. It has to be someone who is here that, sees the hours and adds them up. I will tell you, we will go over budget a little bit more on the police wages because Officer Boucher will be filing the end of year report this year. And quite frankly, some of the things we have not budgeted for in the past because we were not aware of some of the things that we did have to do in order to actually run a police department. So I think one of the things that you're seeing in these over wages are actually things that had to be done at the beginning of the summer in order to get us in compliance with state laws and regulations.
I'm assuming some of these are one-time only charges.
I don't think, because it says police wages, I think that it is actually wages, not like the cruiser or the room, but I do think it is his time to do those specific
Correct.
activities. And again, we will have a slightly more in before next summer, simply because he does have to file the end of year report, as well as go to any court cases that, for tickets that he has given that are disputed.
Wendy, the line 6520 police other, which is $100 that we haven't spent, is that, do you know what that line's been used for in the past, or do we need that line?
I have no idea.
Okay.
And, Beanie would know, so I can ask her about that, but, if you look at some of that may have been training or certifications, but we do have a training line, we have a uniform and supply, so I think that
It feels like we're covering everything off, and I'm wondering if we have.
yeah,
time
so
to
I think
sum
that
up.
could be merged with,
Yeah, because he doesn't even like the other line. It's only
Right, that's why I was noticing.
yeah, so I think that could go into uniforms and supplies.
Bill?
That may have been for the safe that we purchased, and we didn't know where to put it, so I think Steve put it there.
Okay.
Because that was.
It's about $100?
That was $99.
Yeah,
Oh.
so that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It was a safe.
Any other questions from overseers right now? I know it's been challenging because we didn't have a September meeting and to sort of jump through this time. And reminder that we have a November meeting and then we don't have a December meeting, so we're once again going to go in a hop, skip fashion toward the end of the year. Anyone else?
I would just ask Mike specifically, because a lot of the contingency money that we were making sure we were spending this year so that we could spend it in the budget year was the roads. And you've done a ton of work on the roads. I know Billy's going to do the report on that, but are you where you should have been financially, or Steve doesn't make a comment about that. So is all that going the way it should, Mike?
Yes, I think Billy can chime in on that too, but road-wise, we're doing well. One of the things we did not get to was the maintenance, the proactive maintenance on the wharf. We were unsure of whether we would have money for that this year or not at the time that Proctor was there. So we did put that off to start that, putting that confusing, but road-wise, we were pretty close to where we were going to be with the updated budgets for the.
Okay, good. There's also a note from the treasurer that the overseers need to approve Purdy Powers as the auditor for this year's fiscal audit, which will occur next year. Have a motion for such?
I move that we appoint Purdy Powers as our auditor for the annual audit for the general government, sewer, and water.
Second by Lee. Any discussion? All in favor? I assume, Mike, you're in favor? That's all unanimous. And review and approve 2019 utilities budget.
Yeah, which I didn't see printed here. The utilities department's budget is always a little bit different from the annual budget for the general fund. Our budget is approved in December by the overseers. We, with a lot of input from Dick McElhaney, Billy, and Steve, we reviewed them in September, and I say maybe I missed that. And recommendations were tweaked It's always a very tight budget. It doesn't have any increases in very many lines. And the utilities approved the presentation of that to the overseers for approval today. I don't see them printed here today, though.
Can we go to the November meeting? It's,
But, I mean, does anyone have?
I may have a copy of them.
So they were emailed out to everybody on September 15th.
Right,
So-
at the time of the, and there was just a few little like typo type corrections on it. So I'll let it, there were no changes in terms of philosophy or charges. That's the best way to put it.
well, if there are no changes and the budget was sent to the overseers on September 15th, I'm comfortable asking for a vote here. Is there a motion to approve the 2019 utilities budget?
So moved.
Seconded? Sound like
I
Mike.
just have one question.
Oh, well, let's get to that in a second. Do we have a second?
I
Judy, second. Discussion. Mike?
Yes, I'm sorry, yeah. Could you explain, Judy, what Steve means about some of the money was utilities within a different bucket?
In Steve's report,
Yeah.
that's what you're talking about? Can you give me the page, because I think I can answer if I can crawl into his brain. Where are you looking?
I was looking at his email that he sent out earlier today.
Could you give
I
us,
didn't read an email earlier today.
what time is that?
I got it.
So are you talking about the financial statements? We're talking about next year's budget,
Yeah, we're,
Mike?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
yeah, and that's it. You would have seen this on the warrants if you were here to sign them. What he was referring to, I haven't read his email, but now haven't seen the warrants. We had a lot of our debt financing to pay today. So you will see that on the warrants, the general warrants, the checks attached to the general warrants had checks that included utilities payments. So you'll see that there, if you go back and look at the warrants we all just signed, there's little notes on them that says you're approving the sewer payment on the principal bond, but you're going to see that check attached to the general warrants. And the same thing for the water. You're going to see the check actually attached to the general. That's what he was talking about. Like, in other words, he wrote one check for 3 payments.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the 2019 utilities budget approval? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thanks. Would you please?
That takes us to Mr. Page, your report. How to do it.
I had a request from Town of Northport's administrator to help orientate her and the CEO of the property lines of the Village Corporation. I'm not a surveyor, so I can't, I don't quite understand some of the language that they use in the charter, the way it's written in the charter. So with reading that, best I could understand, and what my recollection of living here all my life is, we came up with I think we're probably pretty well defined now with them. One of the things that they would like is if there was some way to get some type of official map of those areas, of the area, because we do not have one. We've got some comprehensive stuff, and we've got some other stuff, but they kind of want a map.
And they is Barbara Ashe and,
And the code enforcement, the town of Northport.
okay.
And they're asking for the outline?
Yeah, they want the outline of the village. What's happening is they're having some people come in and say, well, I'm not in the village. And they're trying to figure it out whether they are or they are not. And there's no real good thing from village telling them one way or the other.
We'll start that at our end, we'll get it firm internally, and then we'll talk to them.
So as I say, I took what I knew and by some of the maps, we went over the properties. I give them the areas that I presume that we are pretty close.
Okay.
You know, just so they got something right now.
What you gave them is a map, or is a,
No, just a,
from here to here to here to here?
yeah. We tried to find the corners. And in that, with what they had, there was one property on this end of the village and one property on that end of the village that the kind of the map that they had drawn out excludes these properties. They're not in the village. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't read that way in the charter. I went back with Amy, and both of those properties that they were disputing are paying village tax at this point. So I said, well, I think the map's wrong. So we need to maybe work on that. We don't have to get it done ASAP, but to help them understand the exact boundaries of the village because of all the questions they get.
Is the map that you worked on with them something that they can give to us, or you have available? So
I have.
Okay, so let's use that as a start. Okay.
Let's see. Dock repairs are done. We did get the dock repairs.
1 second, Lee.
Could you have maybe a graph sheet that you could pass out to us at the next meeting on what you consider the boundaries to be, so the rest of us overseers will have?
Well, Amy and I, we've kind of come up with, we had to take the lot map book or the lot map on the computer and try to piece things together because there's nothing that's one page. It's all pieced together. So we've kind of done that. And then we've worked around trying to get the street address of the corners, all the corner points. And because that was the other thing, they needed a street address, not just a lot map number kind of thing. So, I mean, we can work on it more.
It's reputed that the zoning ordinance has a map included. I've never seen it, but I've been told it's there.
And I've never seen it. But I think it's kind of,
I think Judy's getting it, so, and if it's the same, I was gonna ask her this, I mean, I just Googled it, and if it's actually the same as the Bayside Utilities District, there's actually a definition of it in the legislation, so, I mean, I think this is something that we can get.
It's knowable.
it's knowable, yes, I know it's there, but it would be better to get it all in one spot, so everybody's on the same page.
I agree.
Okay, dock repairs are all done. The one that the engineer that comes in the spring and assesses the dock and repairs, those were done. Mike had already said it, we planned on doing the preventive maintenance start this year instead of waiting until next. But with the discussions back and forth about we got money, we don't got money, it was put on hold. So we'll start that next year.
What time would that happen next year?
Well, you kind of have to go when they're in the area, or close to the area, to get the price down. As it is right now, for them to come in and do work, they're getting about $3,000 a day. That's to launch the boat, that's to get the air compressors, that's to get the equipment in, that's to get the men in, and sometimes they throw in a few nuts and bolts. So why I was trying to start that process this year is if we've already paid the setup charge in that $3,000, then part of the maintenance might have gone a little bit farther because we were paying that setup charge. We could do it together. That was the reason. I've had this discussion with Steve, because I know Steve and I have been trying to work on getting a more accurate budget for the wharf and floats and where year, things have changed. We don't have that shorefront part in there. Everything's been put together, so we've been working on it a little bit more. In our maintenance program for the moorings and things for the swim float and the dock float, this year is supposed to, this coming season was supposed to be the swim float, the storm anchor and the chain and the moorings and all that stuff for this year. We had to bring in the boat float, storm, and the other anchor. We brought them in because they got to be done this coming year too. So that's a little bit more expensive than normal. We got out of our thing. And the only reason on that is when we checked the dock ones this spring, and that we felt that it was time. We didn't want to take a chance where we have so much pull during a storm and rain, heavy rain on that swim float with all the dinghies. Such a pull on it that we was afraid it was going to break, and if it broke, it would have swung around. So we brought that in, we're going to repair it. So we got that cost of bringing it in, repairing those two and setting them back out. So we're kind of out of sequence on our maintenance program.
Out of sequence meaning,
Normally 1 year we do the swim float, the
Right.
next year we do the boat float, we go back and forth.
But this year we have to essentially do.
This year we gotta do both. Yeah, this coming year,
till 2019?
yes.
And when you say boat float, is the, has to be like the bad boy float, part of
That's
that
part of that too.
conversation?
Yes,
Yep.
yeah.
So we speak in singular, but we really mean maintenance for both.
Right, all three floats, yeah.
The float that's out in the harbor where the dinghies are supposed to be kept if you're not using, so you don't put pressure on the dock.
Now, the other thing is, and I know we discussed it, we was gonna try to do it this year, but we let it go, is the, what do you call them? The inboard lines that are hooked to the pilings, the ropes that get to the point where they need to be replaced. And I'm trying to remember what I was just, it may have been $700 for two, to do two. And I'll have to get back to you in November on that, because we're gonna have to replace some of those.
When, how many are there?
There's 4.
And when would they be replaced?
Well, I just can't quite remember what we talked about between Scott and I. Whether we were just gonna replace 2 next year and 2 the following year.
Okay.
We were gonna start that this year, but the way money went, we
Well, if it's something that Scott can, if it's $700, my opinion, and it's something that Scott can get started, can do now,
well, that's kind of what he does.
propose to the overseers that perhaps we move ahead with that. But that would require, since it's over $500, it would require the overseers to take that up.
I mean, I think we could wait until next year's budget.
If as a practical matter, you wouldn't have the time to do the work, even if we approved it at the time in any event.
Oh, I thought you could.
No sense to do it now.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it could get done in the next,
We don't need it till spring.
fine. Then never mind.
That just gets us in a different budget year.
Got it.
So I'll try to get back to you on that a little bit more. The trim board and the repainting of the north trim boards and end pieces on the community hall have been done. The electrical upstairs that we've been talking about is right on schedule. Everything seems to be pretty good. I got a few things that I've got into the office for them to change or come back and straighten out. We're waiting for CMP right now to come change over the line so they can pull everything out of the old box and put in the new box. We do have the generator hooked up thing, you know, that we plug into and all that. That came in pretty good. I think we're within that budget line of that 8,100 and something. There may be one more cost to that, which I don't believe is going to be much. Is trying to get a light in this lower staircase, because what happens during the plays and things, they turn the light off upstairs, and it's hard for people to see to get down the stairs to go to the bathroom. So we want to rewire a light down lower that will stay on with the hall lights down here, just for safety reasons. So that might cost a little bit more money, but not
There's
a
a
lot.
switch along the wall, of the half wall that borders those stairs.
Yeah.
That actually controls these lights down here.
Right.
So there is a wire that goes from downstairs to upstairs.
Well,
They may be able to use that.
The thing is, I told them that, because they said they'd have to get into the sheetrock and tear that up. I says, all right, just do the wiring and that, we'll take care of putting the sheetrock back Monday.
Yeah.
Be cheaper on ours.
Yeah.
You know, we got-
Rob would do that.
I mean, so, that's why I say it's only gonna cost us a little bit more for another light. Okay, so, as you know, the swing float, boat float, out float, bad boy float, whatever, are all in on land. They all came out good. Everything seems to be good and solid on them still. They're still in good shape. On the ramps, with my first initial inspection on the ramps, the boat float was going to have to do the ends on the ramps because they're starting to get egg-shaped. They're elongating, and there's only about that much more meat of material left. And by the way that's been going, it may go through by next season. So I believe those were designed so we can take the bolts out and take that piece off. And then I'll just take them somewhere and have them re-weld it, and we'll re-drill a hole. But I'll wait on that to ask for the cost until I get a better idea if that's how we can do that. The signs that they talked about in Auditorium Park, I ran. I don't know if they're gonna work. It's just to try to, where you had to place them is trying to place them so everybody was somewhat happy not looking at them. But they're in. I was suggested that it was to be written in a different way. I said for it to be legal though for our police officer to do it, you have to use the legal signs for DOT signs, so that's why they're that way. It says no parking between signs, so one's on this side, one's on that side.
See what happens.
See what happens. Okay, and police cruiser, the new one. Boucher went and got that, kind of behind my back, because he wanted to get in here for his last week of being here. That is all ready to go with the exception of the radio. He had taken the radio to a place down in Ellsworth that the chief down in New Hampshire gave him to see if it could be reprogrammed. If it was that type, it could be reprogrammed. I believe it is. It's still down there. So what I told Mike is, all right, you took it down there, so in the spring we'll have to we'll have to figure out, get the cruiser down there and get it installed. Because I don't have the radio.
Can't we ask the Ellsworth place to ship it to us for $16.95 instead of paying someone an hourly expense of going up there?
We might, but they were gonna install it too, so.
But you have a guy here who can install it.
I got a guy that probably can do it too, yeah.
I would ask that you investigate the cost of having it shipped to us. Then you can have control over it being installed, because I'm going to pass.
Okay. The other cruiser that we're gonna decommission,
Did the police officer okay it with you before he did all this stuff?
the day before. He said, I'm going to Massachusetts and I'm going to New Hampshire and bring the cruiser back. I've already called the chief down there, already dealt with it, it's already in the works, so. My plan was to bring it up when I went on vacation on the 1st of August, but with the medical problems in the family, I could not do that, so I was gonna do it this fall. Because there was no hurry for it, because we got a perfectly good one now.
Don't you think it might be prudent to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
Well, the thing that came to me from him is, he's the chief, it's a police matter, it's up to him.
We'll
We'll
discuss this in executive session.
So that's, I didn't want to bring all that
Personnel
today,
issues.
you know, but
Executive session.
just wanted to be aware. Now, the other cruiser that's going out is to try to figure out how we're going to get the decals off the side. It's going to be a long process because they've been on there for quite a while. So,
Just egg it, and peel right off then, because Halloween's coming up.
there you go. So that's something that I'll have to work on after we get past this fall busy season.
Got it.
And what, are we selling that, or what are we doing with that?
We authorized the sale of it last time.
Yeah. I've had 2 people that are interested in it, so that's pretty good.
Could.
I don't know what it
This is
would-
over managing, and so, but I've started saying it. Could we sell it to another police department, and they could pay for taking the decals off, or you can't sell a police car with a decal on it?
Yeah, you can sell it with a decal on if you sell it to another police agency.
Okay, but
All
that narrows.
we have to do is take on our name,
Okay,
because that's how the newest one came to us.
okay,
That's
as long
not
as
the
it,
first one.
okay. Just get the best price you can.
Right. And they're not easy to get off. And where are we? So the roads, we've started the road projects that we had on there. We're almost to the top of Clinton Street, on Upper Clinton, with the gravel. He's been working basically all week on those 2 streets with the ditching and the culverts that were going in on West Street. I believe yesterday and today, he's been hauling gravel and leveling it off on West Street. It kind of looks like he may get to the top where the 2 meet, maybe today. And then he's got just a little bit more to do, so those 2 streets will be pretty much done with what we were planning on doing. The next one was Upper Maple Street. I still, with looking at that and looking at what's proposed, I think there's a sewer line that's going to inhibit us from doing what we really want to do there. And it's the old type sewer line, not the new type.
Yeah.
And I don't believe it's very deep, from what I remember. So,
It's an old sewer line that is currently in use. You don't
Yes.
need a former sewer line.
one of the old clay lines.
Yeah, so the utility department hasn't talked about any type of budgeting or expense items there, so we've got to, if your work is dependent upon us spending money, we need to figure that out.
Right. Well, I tried to do that when we were doing the Maple Street project, but Dick pulled me away from it.
So Billy, when you say it would inhibit us doing it, and Mike, I know you're on the call, on the line, does that mean it couldn't proceed without addressing the sewer issue?
Possibly. We could proceed with the build-up of the road, but actually placing the ditch, a small ditch and the culverts that we planned on putting in, we might not be able to do that because the culverts would end up being out in the middle of the street, and how do you, wouldn't work right. So I keep looking at it, I keep trying to come up with a solution while he's working at the other end. I really haven't come up with one yet, so when we get to that, we may have to do a few little test digs carefully to see if we can find it, so we can, one halfway up and one at the beginning, so we can find exactly where it is for sure. But I know when I hooked in the one on the corner, that it was pretty much in that line that discussed for a culvert, so.
And when you say hooked to the one in the corner, you mean Mary Ann Hanson's house?
Yes, yes. And it was the clay. And when we done Maple Street, it comes across George Street to Maple Street, and it's clay till it gets to the new line, the middle of Maple Street.
Okay.
So we got a little work to do on that left. And other than that, I think, over on the beach at the bottom of Auditorium Park, I know it's been discussed once or twice before, the stairwell that goes down from Auditorium Park to the shore, where we always used to call Pirates Rock.
Yeah, Flat Rock.
Flat Rock. There's a bunch of big logs and timbers and whatever that are up there, making it hard for the average person to access and get down around. And with the tides that we've been having, some of the rocks have shifted and moved a little bit, which Mother Nature does all the time anyway. We may have to do something in the spring in that area, just to clean that up. If we get a good storm, we may lose those logs, you know. So we
And
can deal
you
with
get a
it.
good storm, they lose the logs and half the bank.
Well, we had
Careful what you
the-
wish for.
where we had those lake storms out of the northeast, everything came down the rivers, the big trees and stuff. That's why there's so much stuff on the beach.
And Wendy's seawall, I think it's down there.
Gordon has a question.
Would it be all right to interject along that line? From time to time, there is debris that washes in, and big stuff, all just logs. But some are old pilings or whatever. They have big spikes in them. Over by Pirates Rock right now, there's probably a 5 by 6 piece of decking almost. We slid it up there so the rowboats can sit on it, and it's a pretty good fit. But from time to time, I get a call or whatever as a wharf master, and I see there's one down there right now to the north of the access, the ramp, where the dinghies are all cut. There's a big 10 by 10 with big spikes sticking out of it. Ed Lord a few years ago had to cut up this giant tree that washed in. Is there any avenue for us to take care of that? They are a major hazard, obviously, not just to the boats we're not suggesting we go around looking for these things, but if they wash into our areas, what are we supposed to do with these things? Just hope they don't go under the dock, or I'm just food for thought. What do we do with these things? Do we have an ability to hire somebody to cut them up or drag them up? I mean, there's volunteers that would certainly drag them up onto the shore and things like that, but it's just something to think about, because this is something that happens occasionally.
Doing the time for the bonfire, with volunteers.
It's just giant things you can't move around.
Please.
We've been doing that somewhat, it's like I got Ed Lord to cut up that big tree with a big root system one time. I had to hire the guys at Motor Park one time to take another big tree and stuff away. I got a price for them to do it, so it did cost a little bit of money to do that. The smaller things, like with the spikes in it, like you say, we don't contend with them, not too much, not unless they're right in the area where the boats are and the swimmers like to use the beach. We don't use them for.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about anyway.
So it's basically just, we know it's there, we try to take care of it when we can.
So you should bring it to Billy's attention, and
Well, he usually does.
usually does, right? So the answer is, it sounds like it's at a relatively low level, Gordon, so that we can stay on top of it. It seems.
Yeah, there are times that a piece of debris with big spikes sticking out of it shouldn't be floating around out there. And I know it's tough. Who's going to deal with it? Who's going to pay for it? But
And it's a cost to get
what I'm
it.
asking, well, I think it's a cost we should incur personally. So.
I do it the same.
They all
That's
fluctuate.
it, work faster.
Anything else, Bill?
I don't think so. Oh, the fire hydrant. New fire hydrant is in at Master Square. The old one has been taken out. The ground where the old one was on the end of Griffin Street is high. We made it high. It looks bad right at the moment. The plan is, I don't quite know about it yet, but the plan is to go back in the spring, grade it off a little bit better, get some loom in it, get the grass to grow back, clean it up. We want it to settle over the winter because we had rain the next day and it just messed everything up. And Same way up there at Marathon Square, and it was brought to my attention that the two aluminum pylons that are put up by Marathon Square to protect that hydrant from the snow plows and also to help keep the people who park their cars there back away from the hydrants so we can get access to the hydrants if we have a fire. They're a little tall, but the way that we had put them in, that's about where we could get them without getting into something else that was in the ground. So the only other thing is maybe we could find somebody with a torch or something like that, with a cut them and make them a little shorter.
But you need to be able to see it when you're driving, particularly the plow, so I didn't think they were outrageously tall. But that did raise a question, Bill, for your endless list of projects for me. Looking at it, I looked at the beautiful fence that Harold Heed and I think Larry Gibbs, you said, built, and there are pieces missing from that fence, and it's starting to get wiggly. It should be a project that we should put on the list of things to do for next year, fix that fence.
Yeah, I mentioned it at the beginning of this year, I think, but everybody was busy, and then we had our volunteers who do things for us that are greatly appreciated, done quite a lot of volunteer stuff this year, and I myself as the agent was trying to steer them towards that fence. But I didn't want to push them because they done quite a lot of stuff this year for us.
It's my recollection that was the Historical Society activity.
And I have talked with the Historical Society and that
Paula has a particular talent for
gets
twig
bounced
fences.
around. But it is in bad shape anyway. It's time to, it needs to be replaced really.
Speaking of volunteer work, the Joanna Knotts has changed over the plants down at the Field Park fence. It really looks like she's putting fall asters
Can you speak up, Brett?
Johanna Knott put in fall asters at the fence and window boxes at Field Park. And so Dick was giving her public praise.
Where's mine?
It's the edge of the cliff, where Gordon's old house is, the end of, behind his house,
Very
in front of Johanna's. I have a question.
Yep.
If you were through.
Yep.
You didn't talk about Proc doing, or somebody doing the remediation work that we have planned as our ordinary maintenance on the dock. Mike had mentioned that we didn't get to it because we were concerned about budget. So I guess it's more a comment than a question. If it is intended to be remediation work that is that stitch in time, that saves 9, that isn't the one we should be putting off because it's going to cost us a lot more money. So,
I
just
think
one.
we were in the other room when I mentioned that much.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. No, because I was trying to get that started this year instead of next year because, like I explained earlier, it cost about $3,000 a day to get them set up and get in here and do the work for the day. So my thought was, well, they're here one day, the stuff's already here, let's start on the proactive stuff. That would bring the cost of the setup out.
Right.
And we could get a little bit farther with the proactive stuff. But
I'm making you repeat yourself.
between the bouncing back and forth of what we thought we had for budgets and stuff, and talking with Steve and that, it ended up that we had to let it slide.
There's a casualty of the September meeting not happening, actually.
This may be a comment that's out of line, but it bothers me that Bill gets assigned a task, and then due to sort of sideline conversations with Steve, we decide we don't do it because we don't have the money now. And I'm just wondering if we ought to reorder our thinking about how we do business in that area. If we tell Bill to do something, we should establish the budget to do it. And let Steve worry about the monies and let Bill worry about the task.
No, Steve and I have been working very closely on, and which is good, I think, on the budgets that I have to kind of watch and, keep in check. he's watching the whole picture. I'm just watching them items that I'm responsible signing off on. And it is, you know, if the overseers vote to do something, yes, we should go and do it, you know. But I guess I just let the ball slide on that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Rob, but I think we had a unique situation this year where we approved a number of budgets, and we actually have a few more things approved than we had money for, and Steve was just trying to make sure we didn't overdo it. I am somewhat disappointed that we did not do this, because it would have been nice to start this program, but I think you're right. Going forward, we're going to have things hopefully a little bit more in line when we get into the proactive stuff a little bit more.
Well, it bothers me that the proactive things that we talked about and planned on don't get done because of money. It's sort of like saying that midnight mass is going to be held at 7 a.m. Because it's much more convenient. I'm sorry, I just think we have missed the boat on this proactive activity. That, to me, was a primary reason that we went into a lot of this deliberation. And to just say, well, we couldn't afford it, we didn't do it.
Well, and if we're looking at the treasurer's report for September, it actually looks as though we have more available funds than we had projected. He says 4,800 versus 2,081. Now, I hear what Billy's saying about why would you spend $3,000 just to get this set up to do one thing if it's going to cost $3,000 to do two things and spread that cost out. But that's a good reason to delay the project. That's not a good reason to delay the project, that we have a lot on our plate, and as Brock just said, if Steve says, well, you know, maybe we might not have the money we thought we approved. If we approve the money, it's based on the best information we have available, which includes his estimates.
Lee?
The other, further in that report, it said he thought we ought to keep at least $5,000 left for things.
Unexpected.
We don't want to spend right down to zero. And I would leave it up to Bill. If Billy thinks, like he said, it costs $3,000 to set up, then let Bill, I mean, as overseers, we're micromanaging. I think we need to let Billy and Kaz decide what can be done. If we mess up for 1 year, it's no big deal. We'll get it straightened out. This is the first year we've ever tried this, and we had a lot on our table when we started setting this all up, and I was worried whether we'd ever get it done under the budget we had at the time.
Judy?
I agree with you, Lee, that we have accomplished a great deal this year, in part because of the rigorous attention that Steve has trained us to bring. I don't think Brock's point is that we should not let Billy, working closely, as Bill says, with Kaz, make the process work. I think his concern is we approve a project and then behind the scenes the project is reoriented or reprioritized by someone who didn't vote. Steve is an officer. John is an officer. They implement the decisions of this board. I trust Bill, working closely with Kaz, who knows this stuff really well, to make sure our goals are accomplished. But I don't want to hear, well, Kaz thought about it and he didn't want to do that work right now. I don't think that's what I heard, but I don't want to hear that. I want to hear we're doing the best we can to implement the decisions of the board.
And that's what I heard.
Good, the point's been made. Anything else, Bill?
I think that's it.
Good. I want to, we don't do this often enough, but when you sit next to Bill and you see the list of things that he goes through, and you hear the many projects at one time that Bill is juggling and keeping track of all around the village in terms of our infrastructure, it's never too often to thank you for all you do and for keeping us and for keeping this place humming and the way it does. So thank you very much. And you can take care of my patch. I'm close enough to do it.
That's one of the things that I sometimes have a hard time when you keep asking me if there's any more. Well, yeah, there's other things, but it's on the utility side. See, I have to separate utilities from overseers.
Much appreciated.
So there is a whole nother 2 businesses out there that I have
Oh,
to
I
deal
can
with,
wait
too.
for their meeting. Amy, it's your turn.
The only thing I was going to mention was the new winter hours, that is, Dan has put it out on the website, I do have it up on the bulletin boards, and the only other thing that, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but November is coming up, and utility billings will be doing, as of the 15th of November, which will be doing December. So, I've had some people come in looking to know that, what's my bill, and it hasn't been issued yet. So we're still on the new year and new times. So it will be November 15th, the bills will be done, which will be due December.
Got it. In a sense, thank you. And Bill has one more item he realized he
Yeah,
didn't.
I didn't see it.
Can we finish up with Amy?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I just wanted to say, could you put together a little synopsis of community hall usage? I find that very interesting, and we're putting a lot of money into the community hall. I'd like to know what the usage is during the summer months. That can be, divided by community and those that paid, and how much money they brought in.
Bill?
Yeah. When we have the indemnification, I never can say that word.
Say it right.
But agreements, there's a seawall on the shore road that Paul Benanke wants to get to. So we told him the process, he knows the process because he's gone through it before. He wanted to get started. The thing that we got back from the homeowner was, it has come to my attention that the homeowner's insurance on our property has been canceled. My mother never let me know. So he doesn't have insurance to do that process, and I know there was an email somewhere that Bernanke wanted to go ahead anyway and do it and change this whole process that we do.
I emailed directly, Bernanke emailed me and said, well, I have insurance and you can see that, so why can't we just go forward? And I said, no, our system process is homeowner has insurance, contractor has insurance, then we will consider the indemnification agreement and the easement to go on our property. Rob MacArthur understands that fully. He says that he wants to he'll let us know when he needs us.
Right.
And I answered Bernanke's question, so.
Thank you. All right, so nothing
I
to worry
forgot about that,
Okay.
other than what he wants us to do down at where they go down on the shore. He keeps wanting us to spend $300-400 and he'll fix it up there.
Yes, sir. He approached me and mentioned that he would volunteer to do some riprap work there. If the village were to spend $300 for the materials, he would rebuild that. And I got one of the long-term decisions we need to make is whether or not that is really going to be an active thing or if it's just going to be a village culvert as it is today.
Thank you, Mike. We're going to move on to committee reports now. We'll start with communications. Ms. Metcalf?
I think the things that we accomplished this month was making sure that Ned didn't have to schedule for the meeting, so in fact we're making sure that we have that. And the other, I don't know if this is governance or communications, but we had on our list of things to do under governance committee today.
Oh, wait, we seem to have jumped a bit.
Yeah, I know, but there's a communications piece of this.
Okay.
The approval of the corrections, the Scrivener's errors corrections. Knowing the old adage that you measure 9 times and cut once, I went back for the 99th time to the statute as to when we can approve this. We need to have one more publication in the newspaper. So I had to talk with Amy about that. I missed that we had to publish it twice. We published it for the annual meeting, we didn't publish it the second time.
So just so the overseers and the public understands, we were going to have a vote today on the initial governance committee recommendations. We'll not be having that until there is a publication
want to adjourn.
Publicanize.
Yeah.
Is this for the zoning?
For the zoning, and this is the first step of the zoning. This is the correct the typos essentially, or reorganize it so it's more, I hope, more understandable. But I looked again on Thursday and said the words you're not supposed to say in public. So it's going to have to be next month. I'll have to work with Amy. Sorry.
It's okay. Anything else in the Communications Committee?
No, that's it.
Finance Committee?
No,
Governance Committee, I think we've just
I just
covered.
covered it. Yep.
Any other,
I have a question for the governance committee, is that appropriate?
please?
The tree committee is looking at the tree ordinance and trying to bring it up to date. The old tree ordinance doesn't mention the tree warden or the tree committee, not that it needs to be mentioned in there, but, anyway, at what point would the governance committee like to have our recommendations so that you can move forward with whatever you have to do?
Our priorities that we set for ourselves was finish this up, start the public hearing process on the next more rigorous change to the zoning, and the conversation that Mike and others have been having about the waterfront. So whenever you're ready to submit what you're comfortable with to us, we'll take it. We don't need it right this minute.
Okay, great. But it is, in your opinion, is it something that we could get approved at the next annual meeting? It's just a one-page
Right,
ordinance.
and in fact, the tree ordinance doesn't have to be approved at the end.
Oh, it doesn't have to be?
Just
That can
by the
happen.
municipal
Some of the
office.
ordinances can happen in
Oh,
January.
great, okay, we weren't sure.
Yeah,
So that's
sorry,
great
the tree
information.
ordinance
Right.
and our cable TV
The
ordinance.
dog one, you know.
Oh,
So,
okay.
How is that distinct?
It's this, the law. The law says that there's certain types of ordinances, zoning included, that can be approved only by the legislative body, which is the annual of the villagers. Others can be approved by municipal officers, and the tree ordinance, the dog ordinance, the fireworks ordinance are municipal officers. Zoning, so, yeah, it was the type of thing I was rereading on Thursday.
so the winter is a great time to implement that because the public piece of that isn't going to happen until people are back in town, essentially. So we'll be planning for that. Nothing's going to occur.
Thank you.
Infrastructure, Mr. Lannon.
Yes, hi, moving over a lot of the stuff that's in progress, so rather than repeat all that, we will move on to the issues that we talked about more recently, the things that we're moving forward in the future, for the future. And one is the seawall replacement, the peer review. We contacted Prop Marine and sent them the design package, and we're waiting to work with them. We don't expect to get it quickly. Probably have it definitely by the January meeting. It should be, hopefully we have to quote it and maybe have to work on it by then. But they're still working quite a bit small right now. So this is an activity that we anticipated to finish, for us to finish sometime when the snow starts to fall so that we can get the design done and so on. We gave them the package to look at, and they're going to look at the sort of the four top alternatives, focusing on the recommended alternative and also the replacement in kind as we discussed before.
So, Mike, I've got a question. I'm a little confused. The overseers approved to do a design for the revetment. And the villagers at the annual meeting approved what was on the warrant, which was a design for the revetment. So I'm a little confused if PROC is actually looking at four alternatives when what the overseers have approved is the revetment. At least that's what I heard what you said.
Yes. And what I said was that we are asking them to do a peer review of the analysis and to examine the costs for those. It was something that was discussed in detail at the meeting, and I think that there's no harm in
So sorry. So I'm sorry, because you're on the speakerphone, I didn't hear that here. So this is only for the costs, to make sure that the costs that were presented for the four designs over the summer are, consistent.
Yes, absolutely. That's the point. The point was...
That's fine. I don't need any additional information. That was good clarification, Mike. Thank you.
Okay.
But while we're here on the subject, I'm going to take a mini break here. Lee had a question or comment?
I, along with the rest of the members of the infrastructure committee that went to Paul's meeting down there on the beach, discussed with this fellow that Paul brought down about riprap versus replacing kind. I talked to some other people that I know after that, and there's something that came up that I had never considered. The day that we were down there, there were 2 or 3 people swimming right in front of that wall. There were a couple of kids on the little sand beach playing on the sand. I had somebody tell me that the only reason we have a sand beach at all is because of the remains of a pier that's further up towards Auditorium Park, and the fact that we have our pier there. The action of the waves brings the sand around and places it there. If you replace that with riprap, you will no longer have a sand beach, period. It'll be just like the other side of the dock. And none of us have ever taken that into consideration on any of this stuff. And I thought to myself, after observing the people swimming and the people playing on that little beach, if we don't have a little beach there and find out that we knew why we wouldn't have a little beach there, some people are going to be pretty upset.
So that may be, I don't know if that's something to consider or not, Mike.
I don't know if we would really lose the sand. I don't think we need to get into that here.
Okay.
I think it's more along the lines of what we want to do to protect the area. I believe we're getting sand in that area because of the geometry of the area, not necessarily whether it hits a vertical wall or it hits river.
I disagree with you.
Well, then let's have the infrastructure committee take that on as an issue.
I agree.
Okay? That's not for the overseers to be. All right.
We can talk about that more once we get the peer review.
Fine. Keep going.
The North Street erosion issue, we have received a quote from Harbor Tacky to do a sort of a, as I mentioned, a Tootsie Roll style repair, and we discussed that amongst the infrastructure. And the concern is that the repair might not be robust enough to just be addressing trying to vegetate the slope. We might need to do some other more physical repairs. So the decision was to get another opinion on that also, and whether or not we should actually be looking at some sort of repairs along with vegetation. The one thing that Paul did bring up was that right now where we do have that trench and we have the outfall pipe, we are limited to about 8 feet or so of overflow for when the weather gets really strong and we have a lot of rainwater. The right of way there is 25 feet plus, and one North Street and one Griffin Street have encroached on that, and I had discussed with them that the infrastructure committee should approach the 2 owners there. I believe one of them has a meeting now about removing some of the materials that are in the right of way so that it can be sloped so that the overflow is more uniformly there. And the infrastructure committee felt that we needed some sort of an action from the overseers to direct us to do this formally. And I just want to know what the overseers thought about that.
Mike, this is Dick Brockway. I spoke to Paul Overgang, who is the gentleman who lives at 1 North Street. He was here at the meeting and he's now left. But I spoke to him, and he and I are going to have coffee tomorrow at 9 o'clock over at his place to take a look at the the area. So we're going to start the discussion. Maybe I can have Bill chime in. Any of the officers who want to show up, please come. I need all the support I can get. But he seems to be enthused about helping. As far as the other property there, I look at the map on the wall, the old Greenlaw map, and it looks to me as though there's two properties there shown where Gordon used to live, and both have riparian rights all the way to the waterfront. And so that bank is theirs to do with as they wish.
So you believe that the work that has been done to construct that parking spot is inside of their property and not in the right of way?
That is my understanding. Looking
Okay.
at that 25-foot wide swath of the lower end of North Street is 25 feet wide all the way to the water.
Well, yeah, I understand that, right.
I think
Okay, so if that's the case, then you will discuss it with one person, and what do we need to do about any sort of formal,
Well, it may be that our actions there are more limited than we thought, that we have less land, village land to work with.
I would be interested in, and Mr. Overgod mentioned that something about a survey, and I would be interested in knowing if he had a survey. I think it's real important for us to see where he understands the limits of his land are and see if we're all on the same page. I think that's a place to start tomorrow. I wasn't clear when he talked about it's my land, what he was relying on, other than, we all think we know we're occupying our own land, so.
right, so are you suggesting, Judy, that we look at a survey for the village of our land?
I would not suggest that the village expend money on getting a survey of its land. I would like to see what Paul has to support his reasonable belief that where he's occupying is, and where you're talking about is his land, and then go from there. Surveys, as you know, are extraordinarily expensive, particularly where you're looking for a survey of the what's left over principle, which is what the village has, is the what's left over land.
Yeah, I'd rather not spend the money that we had appropriated at the meeting on survey work if at all possible. I do believe that it's pretty clear that the wood pile that is at the end of North Street is definitely on our land, and that's one thing that should be required to move, to allow water to overflow there.
Well, let's see where the conversation proceeds, I think, with Dick and with the property owner, and we'll move from there.
That sounds great, okay. And then, Dick, Billy had mentioned the wharf maintenance and the dinghy loading, and I have gone back and looked at some of the wharf loading design stuff, and the wharf is not designed for the number of dinghies on it, so we do have an infrastructure issue there in the long run. And I hope that we address that when we talk safety committee a little bit later on some of the long-term plans there. I would like to see that something be done by the end of next year on that. And I would like to make a motion that the governance committee take this on as overseeing it, not necessarily directing it. But overseeing that the yacht club and concerned citizens get together and come up with a solution, because it is definitely a safety issue with the two concerns we had this summer, and I'd like to see the loading on that, especially when it rains and those dinghies get full of water, be much less, because our work is not getting any younger, and we do need to look out for the loading, not just from the float, but just pushing against the dock and everything else.
So I'm hearing that you're asking for a motion for the governance committee to look into, as you say, directing this process with the intent to have some sort of solution by the end of next year.
Right, and my deadline, my proposed deadline would be that something be in place, sort of by around the Islesboro wait time, so the weekend after Labor Day, so that this can all be discussed throughout the winter here, and then through the summer when everybody's back again, before we come up with a final solution, but that we actually sort of set a deadline for, if something hasn't been done by then the overseer is going to have to start, we're going to have to start doing it ourselves, and I think it's better handled by the people that are going to use the boat than the overseer.
So I'm just going to interrupt.
Wendy.
So I think we should just wait until after the safety committee update, just to make a decision on
Sure.
what to do.
Great.
That sounds great. That's wonderful. And then the last thing is road repairs, and I don't want to get into everything that's been going on. Billy and I did talk about some of that stuff up at the top of the hill there. But the thing we wanted to talk about a little bit here is the things that we're looking at for next year or the next round of repairs. We have some issues on Pleasant Street. We also have some drainage issues. And Pleasant Street sort of dumps into Auditorium Park across the way. So we are looking at that.
Rosie.
As we anticipated, once we finish these, we will have others to discuss further at another time.
Got it. Thank you. Thank all of you. Is that it, Mike?
That's it then.
Thank you so much. Safety Committee, Wendy?
Okay, so I'll provide sort of a quick update. The safety committee did meet on Thursday. I'll provide notes for that meeting at a later date, but just some of the highlights. So it was discussed that we had a successful season for both the lifeguards and recommendations for adjustments for both those sets of employees will be provided by the January meeting, along with a timeline for hiring those positions for the 2019 season. I forwarded to the overseers and the safety committee the end of season report from the police officer, and I'll give the highlights here. Officer Boucher made 89 stops, issued 9 citations, 7 for speeding, 1 for operating after suspension, 1 for an open alcohol container. The number of calls for service, and so these are times when people actually, call for him. We had 93 this past summer. The previous time, I think that Officer Boucher was working for us, it was only 50, so clearly the citizens or the villagers were interested in having a police officer attend to issues. He also issued 6 criminal summonses, and I won't go through what those were, but clearly it was an active summer. We do think that the speeding, one of the biggest issues that we have, was abated somewhat over the summer, both with the blinking sign as well as having a visible police officer in town. There are continued concerns about speeding, particularly in the off-season. That's something that the safety committee will send additional recommendations to the overseers. Some of them are the same that we've had before, like speed bumps, but again, I think the recommendation by the safety committee is we don't want to wait until someone gets hurt to try and address some of these things. So some of the off-season police activity I already mentioned, filing for the end-of-year reports and possibly applying for speed control grants that would give us some additional money to actually do speed enforcement, both for wages as well as equipment. The safety committee does recommend the purchase of up to 2 additional flashing speed signs. In discussion with Bill, we think each sign costs roughly $2,200, so we can actually wait for to discuss that at the November meeting if folks would like it, especially given the current state of the budget. As Mike Lannon mentioned, the Yacht Club will have a proposal for DE control for the overseers by the November meeting. I recommend we wait to get the letter from the Yacht Club board before we actually take any action. I think we'll get it probably in a week or so. That'll give us time to read it over and have a discussion at the November meeting if we so choose. One of the things that the safety committee does recommend, and again, we can take time on this, the safety committee does recommend adding a ladder to the boat float so that if someone falls off the float, they have a way to get out without having to swim to the front of the dock. That has been mentioned by a number of people to me, that it is just very dangerous, especially since we have this past summer had a couple of people who fell. So, again.
Does that apply to the code as well?
I think we'll see some additional discussion in terms of what to do about the outflow based on the letter we get from the yacht club. So I think that we can wait that discussion, and I do think we have time to actually, authorize a ladder on the end of the boat float. I just wanted to mention that as part of the current safety committee report.
I just want to note that I think that the dinghy situation, which has been something that's been discussed around this table for years and years, is moving to a different level. I think that it's, to my knowledge, the first time that it's moving into a safety consideration. And previous discussions have been about convenience and priority and aesthetics and lots of other issues, but now we're talking about the challenge of having too many dinghies around that dock, and when they crowd and someone might slip in, or what has happened this past summer. So I'm grateful that it's moving to a new level.
So I think you'll see that addressed in the yacht club letter to the overseers, and so I think that it provides the opportunity to not only read over the recommendation that is well thought out from the yacht club, but then also have a discussion, on the part of the overseers, but even put it back in the safety committee, but then have a dialogue with the yacht club as well. And you all know I'm a little cranky about some of this stuff, but the issue in Bayside is enforcement and entitlement. I must say, I'm not going to complain too much, but I'm really tired of getting complaints about the police officer or the lifeguard, especially when most of the complaints stem from people being told that they can't do something that they may have been doing for generations, and that we seem to have an entitlement issue in our community, and so I think that we're going to see that with the dinghies as well.
Got it.
And then enforcement is going to be the biggest issue.
I'm very optimistic that with the yacht club having actively stated that they are submitting recommendations, that this is going to be a partnership conversation that's going to be very productive.
And I agree, and I think, again, I've seen that entitlement goes away when we have some level of community and peer pressure to do the right thing, and so I think that that's what we need to do as well.
We're going to have our lifeguards back next year?
So we discussed that. I think that Mackenzie, and we are going to make a recommendation that if Evan comes back, that we actually look at having 3 lifeguards. We also are going to make a recommendation about extending the hours into the evening, especially when there's a high tide. There was a lot of swimming this past summer after 5 or 6 o'clock, and from a safety standpoint, it makes sense, and from a community standpoint, it makes sense as well.
Except that the kids love the 5 o'clock, so they can finally go off the side.
When the lifeguard's gone.
Well, then I will tell you,
They will find another way.
I had one comment was to make it impossible for the kids to jump off the rail of the pilings, and I think that this is a compromise so that we can have some middle ground in terms of.
Thank you very much. Town liaison, sorry.
Just real briefly, there is a pretty easy way to do that. You put those domed things on the top of a piling, and that's going to pretty much end that.
The safety committee decided that it was not necessarily a priority.
Thank you. As a parent in Bayside, thank you.
At the last, actually the August meeting, I believe, we talked about the town liaison position, and my recollection is that we suggested it be a somewhat rotating position for the nonce, and that we would try to sort of have it, those who are in the area cover that. I don't know if that's been successful or not. I don't know if anybody has attended, besides Billy, a Town of Northport Selectmen's meeting since then. It's a,
Timmy. Timmy's our
Tim
town
has, but
liaison.
Tim's not-
I hereby nominate Tim.
no, but Tim's, well,
He goes.
town liaison is a role. This board could choose how it wants to identify that position. It does not written somewhere that it has to be an overseer position. And it could be that it is someone who is not an overseer who issues a report on a somewhat regular basis to the board. That's a possibility.
So I'll just, and again, not for us to go into detail today, but I think we should think about it a little bit differently. And I think the importance is one, representation at the meetings, but actually dialogue with the town select. And I don't think that the dialogue with the town selectmen necessarily has to be at the meeting. So again, I think there are a couple of different ways that we could do this.
I agree with Wendy. I think that the point of it is to have a presence. We have that presence with representatives from our community, and Billy in particular, and Steve's very close working relationship with Barbara, and Amy's very close relationship. All of those things have built a relationship that we didn't have when the town liaison position was first created. So it is not as essential to me to have someone sit at a meeting of the selectmen just to say that an overseer came there. In the same way that I think that the selectmen have a great deal of respect for the way we do things, but they don't have to sit here and watch us do it once a month on Sunday. So it is essential that when our responsibilities overlap, we don't ignore their help and ignore their responsibility. But I don't think we need to send Vicki there every other Monday night. And that's, let's face it, that's going to fall on because you're here. And she's already got a lot. I trust that the quality of the information we get from Steve, Billy, and Amy is great. And I trust that they're reading our minutes, and when they have questions, they ask them. On the zoning, for instance, Barbara has reached out and made sure that she has it. That's my view.
So it's no concern of mine to have a position there, the colon after it, that sits empty ad infinitum, but I don't know if what the will is of the other overseers here, whether you'd like to take that position, put it in the deep freeze for now, or keep it there and keep it open, or eliminate it.
I'm fine if the sense is that we've got the lines of communication we need, and I would just say, if something comes up and you feel somebody should be at that meeting other than Bill, I'd be more than happy to attend. And personally, as the only person here that's here year-round, I really don't want to go to 2 meetings a month. Whatever. So I'm fine with that, but I will put myself out there that if something comes up, like with the zoning, where you might need another set of ears to do something.
Just for the record, Lee lives here year-round also.
Oh, that's right.
He lives a little further afield than we do, but he does live here in the vicinity year-round.
Well, I think the last time this came up, when Paul was doing it, we basically said Paul was thinking about kind of either doing away with it or not. And at the time, I thought it was a good idea to keep it, and the reason being is that we've developed a relationship between this board and that board, which we didn't used to have. And I am not in favor of totally doing away with it. I would be in favor of maybe a trial basis of what people are saying to see how it goes.
I think it's essential to keep the conversation about liaison activities a conversation we have in front of us. But I don't think we need a town liaison. To be as blunt as possible, Paul helped me form that decision because Paul would speak as a representative of one at those meetings and misrepresent what we had done, causing backwards conversations about, no, that's not what we said, read our minutes. So that's part of what informs my decision. I know you would want to do that.
A question from the public, Mr. Einstein.
I recall when Maureen O'Keefe was liaison. She wasn't there like Paul was at the time. She was there when it befitted us. my question was still noted, but she was there for the benefit of us.
Yeah.
So I personally don't think she wrote,
Right.
especially now that you have the other contacts with Amy and Margaret.
So should we keep this on the agenda as a spot where we stop and ask if there are any town issues to address? Maybe I will change this to town issues, and I'll move it to a separate place instead of being a committee report. It'll be more, okay.
Yeah. Is there a way we can get a message to the Northport board that says,
Just because you're not seeing us, doesn't mean we don't love you.
well, and if you think you would like somebody from our group there, let us know.
I'll contact Barbara.
Yeah, if there's an agenda item that you think will have a particular input in, we'll make sure we're there in some fashion. I think that's a great idea.
Just, John, I do attend a number of them during the season, and if you do have that on the agenda, I would be happy to report as a citizen who attended. So if you do keep liaison on, I can pass on whatever.
Thank you. I'm going to move it off of committee reports and move it to somewhere else in the agenda. I'll figure that part out. And I will contact Barbara Ashe and just sort of let her know the sense of the board.
And just be clear, because I know Paul and Bill overlapped a lot. That would be separate than what Bill's responsibility there is. We're all in favor of kind of trying to lighten Billy's load here. And, hopefully he appreciates it.
Good. Ms. Matthews, that leaves things with you right now.
Oh, good. Okay, so trees. I spoke with Richard Lerman. I don't have the name of his company, but they used to do work here before. I had seen their truck oddly at a stop sign one day and wrote down the number, and then Billy informed me that they were taking down trees for the town of Northport. He came over yesterday and I showed him 7 issues that we have. We have 3 trees left that we've talked about taking down. In an effort to keep you informed, one's by the museum, a lot of woodpecker damage. Not a priority, but should be removed, but it's not leaning towards the museum. If it falls, it's going to fall in a bunch of alders and stuff. The other is the one on Pleasant Lane. So a couple months ago in August, we took down a very large, very expensive job of a tree on Pleasant Lane. There is another tree there that should come down. It'd be second in priority. The third is a birch tree in Cradle Row. And that one is the one that he and I prioritized as the first one should come down. This all predicated on how much money we have. As you know, there was a question there now. He's going to get back to me with prices. It's my assumption that if it's within our budget, I can go ahead and start the work. What I do is let Bill know that it's going to be done. If I'm around, I'll make sure that he's there. So the others were trees that needed pruning. Oh, well, okay. There is a 4th tree. That's one by the Smiths in Blaisdell Park. The Smith house, there's a tree that's one like this. Blaisdell, right?
Smith.
Smith.
Oh, Smith.
No, H, yeah.
Oh, Smiths, the Smiths. Oddly enough, everybody here would look at that tree and go, oh man, that's got to go. But according to the arborist, and I believe that we should listen to our professionals, there's nothing showing in the root surface to say that it's pulling itself out. There's very little, it's not top heavy or anything to make it sail away into the house. But they have a balcony up there on the 2nd floor, and they're looking at that tree, and that is like right over this house, just like this. So I think, just to reiterate, at the last meeting, it was said that I or someone will inform the Smiths that this is not a priority, but if they want to take it down, doesn't need pruning, but if they want to take it down at their own expense, we would be agreeable to that.
Excuse me, this tree is in Blaisdell Park or on the Smith property?
It's on our property. It's in Blaisdell Park. It's very close. I mean,
But if they do that, we have to replace it.
That's why I'm asking, so.
right. That would be one that I would say definitely goes on the replacement pile. There are many that we're taking down that I'm not necessarily, but we're addressing that when we try to come up with a new tree ordinance. But yes, I would be think so. If they want to take it down, they can. We would, I guess, replace it at our cost.
If a tree comes down in Cradle Row, do we want to put another tree up right there in Cradle
Well,
Row?
we're addressing that in the ordinances, which is why I didn't get into
It's,
that.
yeah, it's not, when we say in Cradle Row, it's not in the traveled way of Cradle Row, it's just
Right.
it's in the
It's right next,
limits.
it's right next to a house on the edge, it's our property.
It's not in the way of the boats.
It's what's your, it's a
But
two.
the answer is no.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah. But the ordinance, but I'm sorry, the ordinance as it stands now says that we do. Okay, so those are.
That's to be addressed, thank you.
Okay, those are 4 trees in question. The others were places, trees that needed pruning. And I'll just cut to the chase. The one that we prioritized was the one, it's a huge one. Yeah, okay, in Bayview Park, just past the fence, on the other side of the fence, it's this huge thing that's just totally out of control, basically. Am I describing where that is? End of Bayview Park, past where the road goes, there's a fence and there's a huge tree that's all over the place there. That is the one that we prioritize as needed pruning. There's another little tree actually in Bayview Park that I suggested maybe he could do a little bit of that also. The others, they're not priorities, they're things that need to be done. But what I would like to get to is, because the pruning becomes a preventive thing, it helps your tree stay alive and all of that. So this one in Bayview Park also, there's lots of wires around and things like that. Okay? So that's where we are with that. While we were out and about yesterday, over in Auditorium Park, the big tree where the branch fell down, almost, just missed the kids that were there 20 minutes ago. Luckily, I had mentioned to Mr. Lerman that with the tree that fell down last October, okay, and the branch that fell where the kids were playing, everybody has a heightened awareness. And lo and behold, in Auditorium Park, there were a couple people there. One of the gentlemen is on the infrastructure committee, but I don't know his name. It was very nice.
Even Dick.
Art, okay, said, what about that tree? And so luckily, as an introduction, I was telling Mr. Lerman all my stories. And they said, well, that one's got to come down, I bet it's hollow, do a bore test, this and that and the other thing. Basically, right now it's fine. We're not doing any of that, we're just going to watch it. And I suggested that we just watch it and, and I said, since your car is parked like 2 inches from the tree, that car is really doing damage to the roots on that tree.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to hear any of that.
No.
Okay, no,
Just take the
but
tree
I
down.
got it in, I said, those people in Auditorium Park, your parking is terrible for trees. So, I'm very happy about that, if you can't tell, all right? And I'm going to just go to the tree committee. We're pretty much on hiatus for the winter months, although by email we are going over, hopefully, and we'll have something in the next few months to get to the governance committee as far as changing the ordinance. I am happy to say, though, that with the help of Betty Woolsey, we put together a spreadsheet of 70 trees that we did inventory in the public areas. And as I look at that, I go, wow, it didn't seem so hard at the time. It's just getting the committee to get to the place to get there. I'm really pleased. So, unless you have any questions?
No, excellent job.
So that spreadsheet is aiming towards another manifestation down the road, I assume, that at some point it'll be a GPS-oriented online version where you can say, here's that tree.
Whenever the overseers want to, spend $30,000 to give us an appropriate GPS, that is exactly where we're going to go with that. Because Mike Lannon, okay, he's the graduate student. I am strictly, I'm maybe into the, grammar school now with this. But yes, we're trying to put something together. I think the ultimate thing is, again, to move toward a preventive measure for our trees and our parks and public areas. And then have something to pass on that has some, evidence-based logic behind it as far as what was proved when and where to go from there.
I'd love to have a conversation with you about this offline.
Okay.
Mike, something you want to say?
Yeah, I have something that falls between safety and trees. This is an update. You remember in the last week, the August meeting, we did that conversation about the safety burn in the basketball court. That number that we put aside for consideration was a bit of around 2,500, 2,575, I think. And it was left to resolve with the safety committee. I've since worked to bring that number down through 2 donations, one of cash and one of the plant material. So we're in around now, I would say, I guess, at a not to exceed number of $1,000.
Excellent.
So I think we're Wendy, is that,
Yeah, and I was just looking on Steve's note to see where that was listed. And I don't know.
I don't think
It's
it's
not, it
I don't
didn't make it
think
into the
Yeah,
the
so-
It's
budget.
in the minutes. It's in
Yeah,
the minutes.
so,
It's,
so that's something we'll just, I don't know, I hate to give you more to do, but I wonder if that's something the finance committee
Yeah.
needs to address, just to make sure that we've captured everything we've agreed to from a spending standpoint.
So if I get that word back from him that there's $1,000 for this year, can we get it done this year, or is it too late? Are we talking next
Well,
year?
I thought we were going to get it done, that's why I wanted to discuss, why I brought it up at the safety committee, why I wanted to discuss it now. But it looks like it's better to do it in the spring. The material's being reserved, they're mature plantings that are going to be held for us, but it's a timing issue from the vendor. She doesn't think she can get it done
Oh,
between
okay.
now and, say, the frost time.
Well, then, if it's going to be in next year's expenses, can't we just approve it now by accepting the donations and get the project underway? But for next year?
But we'll still have to, because we're spending the money next year, we'll still have to have another motion.
True.
So make sure we do it in January.
Right.
Okay.
But Mike, thanks so much for
Yeah.
being such a devotee and goading this along so
And
well.
part of the thing I realize is some of the concerns that were raised about why would we spend that as a safety, $2,500 as a safety, with all the other things we have as safety. So I thought, well, let's take a look at it, see if we can get some of it.
Excellent, thank you.
I need to say one more thing about the tree. The tree that's coming down, is it okay if I contact Dan Webster to let people know the tree's coming down, if anybody wants the wood? Because I would have to make a decision as to whether the tree people take the wood or if somebody wants it.
Well, a couple things. Your estimate from the tree people may include them expecting to get the wood, so you should make that clear
Well,
first.
we've had that
If
conversation.
they charge you the same amount whether or not they take the wood, then
Where's
there
this
is
tree
that.
This is the one that's in Cradle Park.
The edge, it's to a house below me, it's on the other side of it.
Yeah.
Well, Peggy.
Peggy. That's a very easy place to get to, it's kind of public. I think that, if it's not, I think the wood should stay there. Gordon's gone, unfortunately, he's sort of, yes.
I just know that down at Drinkwater School, that they do a lot of stuff outside in the woods, a lot of the classes, and they're actually looking for stumps that the kids can sit on when they do their writing. I've had a couple I've been able to provide, but if there are some stumps that we can provide to the school.
Oh, that's good. Well, in the other words, I know some people that work with the wood donation
That's what I
thing
thought.
for the winter for people that can't afford wood. Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
it's
if I
called the
research-
Woodshed Project or something. Beverly has information on that.
It's okay.
Donate
so
all to people who
And,
need
and,
the wood in
and,
the
and
town.
when they do the slicing at the end, they may make some, if they can make 3 or 4, like 2-foot slices that would be chunks
Right.
for you guys.
Yeah, because they do.
You want some big pieces.
Yeah, something for the kids to sit on, because they do writings outdoors.
Sure, they could, I know they can do that, and I do know that there would be a charge if they took the wood away, because we discussed that. And I don't know who goes up Bluff Road, but there's a huge tree that the town of Northport just took down right next to where the golf court is. And he said they left the wood there and it just disappeared. So, but it was a big tree, but that was a Northport job.
Yeah, the road commissioner took care of it.
Yeah.
So I don't think that'll be, I think that you should make plans.
Okay.
It is cheaper to leave the wood there, just have them cut the tree in the brush. That's how we used to do it.
And Amy, 2 feet high stumps would work for you.
Yeah.
Kid to sit on, right?
Yeah.
Let me know if that changes.
I
It's
may
not gonna
have
happen right
to-
away. I've got to get his quotes back and stuff.
And I think the wood, the people who, the charity that takes the wood, I think they come and take it. So it wouldn't be slag that's sitting there forever.
Of which, if that's the case, just let me know and I'll come by and pick it up with my husband's truck, so, not a problem.
Yeah, I'll let you know when it's going to happen.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Utility Committee.
I think we're good.
No, well, we have a couple things. The report was great, we had a good meeting, thanks for approving the budget, but we want to ratify the decisions made and signed by the president in the interim in September.
Oh, that's right, I totally forgot.
If you want to.
Oh, so we had a couple of requests for in the September utilities meeting, and one was for
Oak Street and,
it says 9 C Street.
yeah, but it's the Smith property, it's the little sway back building Jim Babush is working on
Yes.
Oak Street
So
entrance.
Oak Street and Bluff Road.
To reconnect the sewer for the Bluff Road house, the old Page house, and they're renovating or remodeling the sway back house, moving it up the hill a little bit. Has to do the sewer connections. Oh, the utilities trustees approved it, recommended the overseers. Didn't have an overseers meeting. We needed to get going on the project, the work. So it's the president who signs those. So I move that we ratify the action of the president in signing the utilities trustees approval, because we did it out of order because of the cancellation of the meeting.
Is that usually how we have to go through things?
Yeah, we have to go utilities to overseers. You get to act only if there is an overseers vote. We're out of order because we missed the meeting.
So we are just ratifying.
So now you're ratifying the action you took.
See, that makes it difficult on my end sometimes when you guys change your meeting date or you don't have a meeting, because sometimes we have people waiting to get approved.
It's time we got in under the gun.
So I move, wait a second, please second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. And now I guess I'll sign those.
You already have.
I already have.
That's why
This
it's
is
called
ratifying what
ratifying.
already happened. Now I'm so sorry. This is another billion brain cells gone. And that leads us to report of the tree warden, although I wonder if, for the moment, we don't need a tree warden, and really that's your, as head of the tree committee, are you essentially, you're serving? Is there more to report on?
No, I combined them both. I combined them both.
Now, we have moved through a lot of material here, and had, are there any,
We're here.
Mike? Are there any additional comments or questions from meeting attendees? You didn't get a chance to speak earlier, want to speak again? I'll quickly mention new and continuing business. Actually, I'll take these out of order. First, our next meeting is Sunday, November 18th at 9 o'clock here. Right now, who thinks they cannot be at that meeting? That's Mike, Terrell, and Wendy. Mike Lannon,
Yes,
you can be here,
Physically present?
physically present.
I will be physically present if need be.
The answer is yes, you need be. You're hearing it now.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And Personnel HR Committee. This is an issue that was raised by Steve Cazelonis, which is that he thinks that there are a sufficient number of issues regarding personnel and HR, tracking compensation changes, issuing letters, making sure that new people come on board in the proper fashion. And he wonders if we maybe need to have a committee, or suggests rather, that a committee be established for this purpose. He said when he was an overseer, he took on that role sort of in informally, and then to some degree has been doing that also as treasurer, some of those capacities. And obviously be someone who would work closely with Amy. So I don't know if the board has any interest in this matter or not, or if you want to kick the ball down the road until Steve returns in November to have a fuller discussion then. Lee?
I'd be in favor of kicking it down the road.
Well, I'm always there for that.
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay. So we'll address this in November. I'm just giving you a heads up then.
Yeah.
And in fact, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to forward to the overseers, because I don't think you got it, it's just to me, Steve's email that has information so that you'll be able to understand what he's saying. Okay. Give me 1 second. That brings us to the end of our scheduled meeting, actually earlier than I thought we were going to be. We're going to move into executive session for personnel and legal advice matters. And we're going to ask Tim Samway to stay for the first matter. Let's deal with that initially, which is a personnel issue.